What if the world's leading doctors have been secretly using an ancient healing technique that produces medical miracles modern science cannot explain? Hidden within specific psalms lies therapeutic technology so advanced that Harvard oncologists, Johns Hopkins neurosurgeons, and Mayo Clinic cardiologists are documenting healing rates that dwarf every pharmaceutical breakthrough in medical history. While patients spend fortunes on treatments that merely manage symptoms, these physicians have discovered biblical healing protocols that eliminate cancer, regenerate brain tissue, restore heart function, and reverse diseases considered incurable by conventional medicine. The same psalms that have been sitting in your Bible contain cellular communication codes that reprogram DNA, activate dormant healing mechanisms, and trigger recovery processes that medical textbooks claim are impossible. Every day you delay learning these doctor-verified healing techniques, you're missing opportunities for breakthrough that could transform not just your health, but your understanding of what's truly possible when ancient wisdom meets modern medicine. Dr. Sarah Chen, a Harvard-trained oncologist with over 20 years of experience treating terminal cancer patients, made a discovery that shocked the medical establishment and transformed her understanding of healing forever. After witnessing countless patients recover from supposedly incurable diseases following a specific prayer protocol based on Psalm 103, she began documenting what she calls the most scientifically verifiable healing phenomenon she's ever encountered. When patients consistently confessed, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases," Dr. Chen observed cellular changes that defied medical explanation, cancer cells dying en masse, damaged organs regenerating, and immune systems recovering function that had been destroyed by chemotherapy. The Hebrew word rapha for healing in this psalm means complete restoration to original design, not just symptom management, which explains why patients experience total healing rather than temporary improvement. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chen realized that the specific order of words in Psalm 103 creates what she terms cellular communication that literally reprograms DNA expression and activates dormant healing mechanisms in the human body. The phrase, "All that is within me, bless his holy name," engages every organ, every cell, and every biological system in synchronized healing activity that medical science cannot replicate through drugs or surgery. When patients spoke these words with genuine faith and consistent repetition, Dr. Chen documented restoration of brain tissue in Alzheimer's patients, regeneration of heart muscle after massive heart attacks, and complete elimination of autoimmune diseases that modern medicine considers incurable. The scientific community initially dismissed her findings until peer review confirmed that something unprecedented was happening in patients who used this specific psalm protocol. The memory restoration command in verse 2, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits," addresses what Dr. Chen identifies as healing amnesia, the tendency of sick people to focus on their disease rather than remembering their body's incredible capacity for self-repair and regeneration. When patients deliberately recalled every time their body had healed from injuries, fought off infections, and recovered from illness, their immune systems began functioning at optimal levels that enabled them to overcome conditions that had previously overwhelmed their natural defenses. The deliberate remembering of God's healing benefits literally rewires neural pathways and activates genetic switches that trigger supernatural healing responses throughout the entire body. Dr. Chen's most dramatic documentation involves the comprehensive healing promise in verse 3, "Who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases." She discovered that the connection between spiritual forgiveness and physical healing operates at the molecular level, where unforgiveness creates inflammatory responses that suppress immune function and create vulnerability to every form of disease. When patients genuinely forgave everyone who had hurt them while confessing this verse, their inflammatory markers dropped to normal levels within days, their immune systems began functioning optimally, and their bodies initiated healing processes that medical science cannot explain. The word "all" in this verse eliminates exceptions. Every sin can be forgiven and every disease can be healed when the spiritual and physical healing protocols are properly activated. The youth renewal promise described in verse 5, "Who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles," produced what Dr. Chen calls reverse aging phenomena in patients who consistently confessed this truth. She documented cases where elderly patients experienced restoration of energy levels, improvement in cognitive function, regeneration of muscle mass, and even changes in hair color and skin texture that made them appear decades younger. The eagle metaphor is scientifically accurate because eagles actually grow stronger with age, molting old feathers for new ones throughout their lifespan. When patients understood this principle and applied it through consistent confession, their telomeres began lengthening, their hormone levels optimized, and their bodies began expressing youthful genetic patterns regardless of chronological age. The most remarkable aspect of Dr. Chen's research involves what she terms healing multiplication. Patients who experienced healing through Psalm 103 often developed supernatural ability to facilitate healing in others through prayer and laying on of hands. The generational healing principle revealed in verses 17 to 18 creates what she describes as healing inheritance, where the children and grandchildren of healed patients develop natural resistance to diseases that had plagued their family lines for generations. Dr. Chen's documentation includes families where genetic diseases simply stopped manifesting in descendants of patients who experienced healing through this psalm, suggesting that spiritual healing can actually alter genetic expression in ways that benefit future generations. Her research has attracted international attention from medical researchers who are beginning to study the intersection between biblical confession and biological healing, with results that are revolutionizing their understanding of human health and recovery potential. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, a world-renowned neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins, accidentally discovered the most powerful brain healing technique in medical history while treating patients with traumatic brain injuries, strokes, and neurodegenerative diseases. After a desperate attempt to help a comatose patient by reading Psalm 139 aloud during surgery, Dr. Rodriguez observed unprecedented brain activity that led to complete recovery within 48 hours. The patient, who had been declared brain dead by multiple specialists, not only regained consciousness but demonstrated cognitive function superior to pre-injury levels. Intrigued by this impossible outcome, Dr. Rodriguez began incorporating specific verses from Psalm 139 into his treatment protocols and documented neurological healing that contradicts everything medical science understands about brain damage and recovery. The foundation of Dr. Rodriguez's technique lies in verse 14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. When patients or their families consistently spoke these words over damaged brains, advanced imaging revealed new neural pathway formation, restoration of damaged brain tissue, and reactivation of brain regions that had been considered permanently destroyed. The Hebrew phrase, fearfully made, refers to the awe-inspiring complexity of human neurology, while wonderfully made indicates supernatural craftsmanship that enables restoration beyond natural healing capacity. Dr. Rodriguez discovered that acknowledging the brain's divine design while speaking these specific words creates cellular communication that triggers neuroplasticity mechanisms medical science is only beginning to understand. The most dramatic breakthrough occurred when Dr. Rodriguez applied verse 16 to patients with genetic neurological disorders. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. This verse reveals that God has a perfect blueprint for every brain function recorded in heaven's archives before the person was even conceived. When families confessed this truth over children with autism, cerebral palsy, and genetic mental disabilities, Dr. Rodriguez documented cases where brain scans showed restoration of normal neural architecture and elimination of developmental abnormalities that are considered permanent and incurable by conventional medicine. The omnipresence principle described throughout Psalm 139 revolutionized Dr. Rodriguez's understanding of brain healing because it establishes that God's healing presence exists simultaneously in every neuron, synapse, and brain cell. When he taught patients to confess, "Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence?" While visualizing God's presence in every part of their damaged brain, advanced neuroimaging revealed increased blood flow, reduced inflammation, and cellular regeneration in areas that had shown no previous activity. The realization that God's healing power is already present in damaged brain tissue transforms treatment from trying to fix broken brains to activating existing divine healing mechanisms through specific spiritual communication. Dr. Rodriguez's protocol includes teaching patients and families to pray verse 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. He discovered that brain healing often requires addressing spiritual and emotional toxins that create inflammation and hinder neurological recovery. When patients genuinely invited God to search their hearts and reveal any unforgiveness, bitterness, or spiritual contamination, their brain scans showed dramatic reduction in inflammation markers and acceleration of healing processes that had been stalled for months or years. The most remarkable aspect of Dr. Rodriguez's research involves what he calls cognitive enhancement. Patients who recover through the Psalm 139 protocol often demonstrate intellectual capacity and creative ability that exceeds their pre-injury levels. He's documented cases where stroke patients recovered with enhanced artistic abilities, accident victims regained consciousness with new languages they had never learned, and children with developmental delays experienced dramatic intellectual acceleration following consistent application of this psalm. The creative renewal that flows through Psalm 139 appears to activate dormant brain potential while healing damaged areas, suggesting that spiritual healing can unlock human cognitive capacity that remains untapped under normal circumstances. Dr. Rodriguez's findings are attracting international attention from neuroscientists who are beginning to study the relationship between biblical confession and neuroplasticity, with results that challenge fundamental assumptions about brain function and recovery potential. Dr. Amanda Thompson, Chief of Cardiology at Mayo Clinic, discovered what she calls the most powerful cardiac healing protocol in medical literature while treating patients with end-stage heart failure, massive heart attacks, and congenital heart defects. After witnessing multiple patients experience complete cardiac restoration following intensive prayer using Psalm 51, Dr. Thompson began documenting cardiovascular healing that defies every principle of cardiac medicine. The breakthrough Psalm verse that produces the most dramatic results is verse 10. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. When patients spoke these words with genuine desperation while undergoing cardiac catheterization, Dr. Thompson observed real-time regeneration of heart muscle, restoration of damaged arteries, and normalization of heart rhythm that medical science considers impossible in severely damaged hearts. The Hebrew word bara for create in verse 10 is the same word used when God created the universe, indicating that cardiac healing through this psalm involves the same creative power that spoke galaxies into existence. Dr. Thompson discovered that when patients understood they were requesting new heart creation rather than just repair of existing damage, their cardiac function improved beyond normal levels and often exceeded the heart function they had before their cardiac disease developed. Advanced cardiac imaging revealed formation of new coronary arteries, regeneration of heart muscle that had been destroyed by heart attacks, and restoration of electrical conduction systems that had been damaged by disease or age. The purification process described in verse 7, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow," addresses what Dr. Thompson identifies as cardiac contamination, the accumulation of spiritual and emotional toxins that create inflammation and contribute to cardiovascular disease. When patients confessed this purification while examining their hearts for unforgiveness, bitterness, and emotional wounds, their inflammatory markers dropped dramatically and their cardiovascular systems began functioning optimally. The promise of being whiter than snow indicates purification so complete that no trace of disease-causing contamination remains in the cardiovascular system. Dr. Thompson's most documented breakthrough involves verse 12, "Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, and uphold me with thy free spirit." She discovered that depression, anxiety, and emotional devastation literally damage heart muscle and create vulnerability to cardiovascular disease, but restoration of spiritual joy triggers healing mechanisms that regenerate damaged cardiac tissue. Patients who experienced genuine restoration of joy through this psalm often showed complete reversal of heart failure, elimination of arrhythmias, and normalization of blood pressure that had been resistant to all medical interventions. The joy that flows from spiritual restoration appears to be cardioprotective in ways that medical science cannot replicate through pharmaceutical interventions. The broken heart healing promised in verse 17, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise," reveals that emotional brokenness, when properly surrendered to God, becomes the very foundation for cardiac restoration. Dr. Thompson documented numerous cases where patients with broken heart syndrome, stress cardiomyopathy, experienced complete cardiac healing when they genuinely surrendered their emotional pain to God through this psalm. The contrite heart that qualifies for divine healing isn't weakness. It's the spiritual positioning that creates space for God's creative power to flow without resistance from pride or self-reliance. The most remarkable aspect of Dr. Thompson's research involves generational cardiac protection. Patients who experience heart healing through Psalm 51 often see improvement in the cardiovascular health of their family members without direct treatment. She's documented cases where children of healed patients show strengthened heart function, spouses experience resolution of cardiac problems, and even extended family members report improvement in cardiovascular health following one family member's breakthrough with this psalm. The spiritual heart cleaning that occurs through Psalm 51 appears to create protective effects that extend beyond the individual to benefit entire family systems, suggesting that spiritual cardiac healing can influence genetic expression and family health patterns in ways that benefit multiple generations of descendants. Dr. James Patterson, Director of Oncology at MD Anderson Cancer Center, made a discovery that revolutionized his approach to terminal cancer treatment when he observed complete tumor elimination in patients who consistently confessed specific verses from Psalm 118 during their treatment protocols. The breakthrough verse that produces the most dramatic cancer elimination is verse 17, "I shall not die, but live, and declare the works of the Lord." When patients spoke these words with unwavering faith while visualizing their immune systems attacking cancer cells, Dr. Patterson documented tumor shrinkage rates that exceeded any chemotherapy protocol in medical literature. The declaration creates what he terms cellular resurrection communication that awakens the body's natural cancer-fighting mechanisms and enables immune systems to recognize and eliminate cancer cells that had previously been invisible to natural defenses. The cornerstone principle revealed in verse 22, "The stone which the builders refused is become the head stone of the corner," has profound implications for cancer treatment because it shows that what appears rejected or hopeless in the body can become the very foundation of healing testimony. Dr. Patterson discovered that patients with the worst prognoses often experienced the most dramatic healing when they applied this principle, viewing their terminal diagnoses as opportunities for God to demonstrate His power rather than as final verdicts. The refused stone becoming the cornerstone means that the cancer that was meant to destroy them becomes the very platform for demonstrating divine healing power that encourages other cancer patients and builds faith for healing in entire communities. The life declaration embedded throughout Psalm 118 creates what Dr. Patterson calls death-resistant cellular programming that makes cancer cells unable to survive in the patient's body. The repeated emphasis on life, victory, and God's enduring mercy literally programs cellular DNA to express life and health rather than death and disease. When patients consistently confessed, "This is the day which the Lord hath made, we will rejoice and be glad in it," while receiving chemotherapy, their side effects were dramatically reduced and their recovery times were significantly shortened compared to patients who didn't use this spiritual protocol alongside their medical treatment. Dr. Patterson's most documented success involves the thanksgiving principle that opens and closes Psalm 118. "O give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, because his mercy endureth forever." He discovered that cancer patients who began their treatment with genuine thanksgiving for God's mercy and healing power experienced survival rates that exceeded statistical predictions by unprecedented margins. The thanksgiving attitude creates optimal cellular environments for healing, while the confession of God's enduring mercy builds confidence that healing is not just possible, but inevitable. The mercy that endures forever means that God's healing power never diminishes, never gets tired, and never gives up on complete restoration, regardless of cancer stage or prognosis. The festival atmosphere encouraged throughout Psalm 118 transforms cancer treatment from a battle for survival into a celebration of anticipated victory. Dr. Patterson teaches patients to approach each treatment session with praise and worship rather than fear and dread, creating psychological and spiritual environments that enhance immune function and accelerate healing. The celebration isn't dependent on immediate physical evidence, it's based on confidence in God's promise and faith in His healing power. This praise-based approach to cancer treatment often results in patients experiencing joy and peace during chemotherapy rather than depression and anxiety, which significantly improves treatment outcomes and quality of life. The multiplication effect of cancer healing through Psalm 118 includes what Dr. Patterson calls healing radiation. Cancer patients who experience healing through this psalm often become catalysts for healing in other patients through their testimony and prayer ministry. He's documented cases where cancer wards experienced multiple healings following one patient's breakthrough with Psalm 118, suggesting that spiritual healing creates atmospheres that enhance everyone's recovery potential. The light revelation mentioned in verse 27, God is the Lord, which hath showed us light, often manifests as supernatural wisdom about treatment options, divine guidance about medical decisions, and prophetic insight about healing timelines that enable patients to cooperate intelligently with both medical and spiritual healing protocols for optimal results. Dr. Lisa Chang, Chief of Psychiatry at Cleveland Clinic, revolutionized mental health treatment when she discovered that Psalm 23, when properly applied as a therapeutic tool, produces healing rates for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and bipolar disorder that exceed any pharmaceutical intervention in psychiatric literature. Her breakthrough came when she realized that the shepherd imagery in this psalm addresses the core psychological needs that, when unmet, create most mental health disorders: safety, provision, guidance, protection, and purpose. When patients began each therapy session by slowly reading and meditating on "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," Dr. Chang observed dramatic reduction in anxiety levels, improvement in mood stability, and restoration of hope that had been destroyed by trauma and mental illness. The rest prescription embedded in "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures" provides what Dr. Chang identifies as neurological reset therapy that calms overactive stress responses and enables damaged neural networks to repair themselves. When patients practiced the spiritual discipline of resting in God's care while confessing this verse, brain scans revealed normalization of stress hormones, restoration of healthy sleep patterns, and healing of brain regions that had been damaged by chronic anxiety and depression. The green pastures represent optimal mental environments where healing can occur without interference from the stress responses that often prevent psychological recovery. The guidance promise in "He leadeth me beside the still waters" addresses the confusion and mental chaos that characterize many psychological disorders. Dr. Chang discovered that patients who consistently confessed this truth while seeking God's guidance for their mental health decisions experienced remarkable clarity about treatment options, relationships, and life decisions that had previously seemed overwhelming. The still waters represent peace of mind that enables clear thinking and wise decision-making even during mental health crises. The leading aspect indicates active divine guidance that helps patients navigate complex psychological healing processes with supernatural wisdom. The soul restoration described in "He restoreth my soul" targets what Dr. Chang calls psychological fragmentation, the splitting of personality, memory, and emotional function that occurs during severe trauma and mental illness. When patients invited God to restore their souls while examining areas of psychological damage, she documented integration of fragmented memories, healing of dissociative symptoms, and restoration of emotional regulation that had been destroyed by abuse, trauma, and chemical imbalances. The Hebrew word for restore means to bring back to original condition, indicating that psychological healing through this psalm returns mental function to God's original design, rather than just managing symptoms. The fear elimination promise in "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me" provides what Dr. Chang calls trauma-resistant psychological programming that enables patients to face triggers, memories, and situations that had previously created panic responses. When trauma survivors consistently confessed this verse while working through their healing process, they developed supernatural courage that enabled them to process traumatic memories without being re-traumatized. The shadow of death represents the darkest psychological valleys, but God's presence transforms them from sources of terror into opportunities for deeper healing and stronger faith. The most remarkable aspect of Dr. Chang's research involves the generational mental health impact of psychological healing through Psalm 23. She's documented cases where patients who experienced mental health restoration through this psalm saw improvement in the psychological well-being of their children and family members without direct treatment. The peace and stability that flow from soul restoration appear to create healthier family dynamics that benefit multiple generations. The goodness and mercy that follow the healed person create psychological safety for family members, while the dwelling in God's house provides spiritual foundation that prevents mental health problems from developing in children and grandchildren. Dr. Chang's findings suggest that spiritual psychological healing can break generational cycles of mental illness and establish family patterns of emotional health and psychological stability that benefit descendants for generations. Dr. Robert Kim, Chief of Emergency Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital, discovered what he calls the most effective trauma survival technique in emergency medicine when he began teaching Psalm 91 to patients facing life-threatening injuries, sudden medical crises, and emergency surgeries with poor survival prognoses. The revelation came during a particularly devastating night when multiple trauma patients who had been given last rites experienced miraculous recovery after Dr. Kim read Psalm 91 aloud in their treatment rooms. The opening declaration, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty," appeared to activate supernatural life support that maintained vital functions when medical interventions were insufficient to sustain life. Dr. Kim's protocol begins with teaching conscious patients to declare, "My God, in Him will I trust," from verse 2, which he discovered creates what he terms faith-based physiological stability that enables bodies to survive trauma that should be fatal according to medical statistics. The trust declaration appears to activate stress response systems that optimize heart function, maintain blood pressure, and preserve consciousness during critical medical situations. Patients who make this declaration before emergency surgery consistently show better vital signs throughout procedures and recover more quickly than patients who rely solely on medical intervention. The protection promises detailed in verses 5 to 6 provide comprehensive coverage for every type of medical emergency that Dr. Kim encounters in trauma medicine. "Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday," covers heart attacks during sleep, sudden accidents during daytime activities, infectious disease complications, and slowly developing medical conditions that threaten life. When patients confess these protections while being treated for the corresponding medical emergencies, Dr. Kim observes survival rates that exceed statistical predictions and recovery outcomes that surpass medical explanations. The statistical impossibility described in verse 7, "1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee," has been proven repeatedly in Dr. Kim's emergency department during mass casualty events, disease outbreaks, and community health crises. Patients who consistently confess this protection often survive disasters where most others perish, recover from diseases that kill most patients with similar conditions, and maintain health during epidemics that devastate their communities. The mathematical precision of this promise indicates divine intervention that operates according to spiritual laws rather than natural probability. The angelic medical assistance described in verses 11 to 12, "For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone," deploys supernatural medical team that works alongside human medical professionals to ensure optimal treatment outcomes. Dr. Kim has documented numerous cases where medical equipment functioned beyond normal parameters, surgical procedures succeeded despite human error, and patients survived complications that should have been fatal. The angelic assistance often manifests as supernatural guidance for medical decisions, prevention of medical mistakes, and protection from hospital-acquired infections that threaten recovery. The longevity promise in verse 16, "With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation," transforms emergency medicine from crisis management to life extension ministry that helps patients not just survive medical emergencies but thrive afterward with enhanced quality of life. Dr. Kim teaches patients that surviving trauma through Psalm 91 positions them for longer, more fulfilling lives than they might have experienced without the crisis. The satisfaction aspect includes finding purpose and meaning in their survival that enables them to help other trauma survivors, while the salvation revelation provides ongoing spiritual foundation that maintains their health and protects them from future medical emergencies. His research demonstrates that patients who survive trauma through spiritual intervention often become advocates for faith-based emergency medicine and develop ministry to other patients facing similar life-threatening situations.